why can't we talk about the opposite of that? It
Mhm.
it just doesn't feel it's treated as if it's inappropriate to bring those kind of things up, and I just
Mm.
wondered what you thought about
Yeah.
shifting that,
Yeah. There's
in the setting within the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple I mean, there's so many things you just touched on with that. I mean, just that experience you described, like, there's so many layers that we could peel
Mm,
back and unpack, but, like, the 2 things that really jump out to me, the first one is, to your point about, yeah, nurses often feel uncomfortable to be drivers of that conversation. Like, absolutely, this is the context that you're in, right? Who are the people you're working around? What is the delegation of responsibility? Like, what are you comfortable with? Who's gonna have your back? Right? Like, so if you go to the extreme extent of like what I'm describing of like really participating in this conversation, like bringing someone forward, are you going to be supported in communicating in that way? And that's going to depend on what the local culture is around all these questions, right? If you're working in an ICU that's dominated by medical providers who really see the job as saving lives, right, and not the care of very sick people, that is going to include some of these people dying and helping support that if you don't have a robust, if your local culture does not support a robust approach to that, then yeah, you're probably not going to be very well supported in those conversations. And knowing what the boundaries are and how that works is going to be important to keep you out of trouble, number one. And number two, to think about, is that a culture I can succeed in, right? If there's not room for me to be a provider of care here, which includes those communication and emotional aspects, like, am I going to be able to succeed and thrive in the space over time? And that may not be such a big question when you start out, because you're mostly just focusing on like the bread and butter skills, that acquisition. And then as those come into play, you're like, hey, I'm learning to notice when these people are dying, and I'm learning to see this stuff that's there. And I think that I feel comfortable enough to recognize this, to participate in that. Am I going to be supported to do that? And so you may come to a place where the place you started isn't the place you finish, because you get everything you can from that environment, and then it's not going to support that next stage in your growth to build those other skills. Also recognizing that people come to their training with a variety of skills, right? I have a dear friend who we're the same age. He's done his career in the service industry and just went to nursing school, and he's bringing a lot to that work that the nurses around him don't have fresh out of training, because they didn't spend 30 years in bars seeing people decline in alcoholism and struggle with emotion and learn how to talk to them and deal.